See, I forget about that stuff. Okay, thank you all. I'm calling this meeting to order. I know this is, we'll get through this pretty quickly. I know it's a nice day outside. So there's a few things on the agenda here. First is the comprehensive plan amendment, then it's the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulation amendments. So the comprehensive plan, let me just explain to everybody why I asked for this meeting and why I thank you for being here and what's important. We have a locally approved comprehensive plan. However, our comprehensive plan has not been approved by the state. We need to submit it to the state in order to get state approval. The recent legislation was adopted at this session that indicates that for us to have an affordable housing plan that could deny a comprehensive permit for affordable housing, our affordable housing plan would need to have state approval. There are other reasons to deny a comprehensive permit, but that is one reason. And so for that reason, I thought it's important for us to get our comprehensive plan submitted to the state. And one of the things we needed to significantly revise was the housing element, because a few months ago, the Rhode Island Department of Housing issued a draft called Housing 2030, which provided some goals for the city of Cranston and other communities and a menu of options for communities, cities and towns to consider. So I've worked with the staff. I believe do the following: get commission approval, get council approval, get the mayor's approval, and potentially get statewide planning approval. Okay, so this is an important step towards that. And so that's the first thing. And then the other two items are zoning ordinances, subdivision regulations. I'll just say at the outset, I have not reviewed these prior to the submission to you. These are a much less priority to me because, you know, in regards to state law is what state law says. And the state law goes into effect unless we have some discretion. This is not a priority to me as much as the comprehensive plan is a priority. So with that said, we can get going. So Director, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to just look at, I don't know if the commissioners have reviewed the housing element plan, housing production plan, which I know was submitted and put on the website.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight that one of the things that we said we'd do from the onset was we rewrite the goals as goal statements. So you have that separate page that has the goals that are written as goals, and then a little table that shows how all the policies, which goals each of the policies map to. So while the policies haven't changed very much they've changed to reflect the plan, those goals you're seeing for the first time in this form. So in addition to the text of the draft being new, definitely want comments on the goals themselves and the let me see this little guy here.
Okay.
So goals, and then each of these columns represents one of these goals above, which I've summarized with just a quick title. So you can see that many of the policies address multiple goals, and there are policies that address all of the goals. So each policy has at least one goal that it addresses.
Okay. Another thing too, this is a workshop. So I know that next week we've put this as notice in the newspaper. And therefore I know the public can weigh in there. Right now I'm kind of focused on getting something so that the public can comment on properly. I'll open it up. First, I'll just start with my few changes and issues, and it's pretty minor because I worked with you, Director, on these. I'll point out that we have a typo on the goals where it says 2030 and of, so just something to fix. Second, and these are more substantive, as I indicated to you before, in my edits, I wanted the goal to be there about the character and density of established neighborhoods. Excuse me, not that one, Julie. Hold on. That's it. Cranston maintains its uniqueness as a predominantly suburban community, but with a mixture of urban, suburban, and rural neighborhoods. I know we had a conversation about that. I believe it should be in there because A, we have that language in the land use plan element. B, I believe that reflects what Cranston thinks of itself historically. And that goal, basically overriding goal, is reflected in basically the policies. We maintain density, we maintain the character of our neighborhood, but we do have opportunities to increase housing in different places. So that's one. Second is.
Are you
Nope.
talking about goal 2 or 3?
I'm talking about, let's see. The one you did not put in at all.
We kept I don't think that we left one out.
I'll read it to you.
Okay.
And I have a copy of what I submitted to you. So it's Cranston maintains its uniqueness as a predominantly suburban community, but with a mixture of suburban, and rural neighborhoods.
Okay, that is on this chart, so we'll keep that in.
Okay, so
as,
just put,
goal 3.
okay, so just put that as one of the goals on page 5-1.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize if I have a lot of paper in front of me for.
Oh, there's been a lot of paper.
So I'd like that as submitted the goals. The second one is on page 511. This is about the redevelopment of mixed use zones. And the second to last sentence of that paragraph in 3.6, this last sentence is historic building set the appropriate height, blah, blah, blah. I had a sentence, preliminarily, it is anticipated that zoning will allow for 15 units per acre. The reason I had that is because statewide planning in their menu of options indicated they wanted at least 15 acres, 15 units per acre. I wanted to comply.
Right, no, I think we can comply. The reason I took out that as a limit is because the math just doesn't work for us to meet the housing goal if we cap it at 15 units per acre. And certainly there are many neighborhoods in Cranston that far exceed 20, 40 units per acre. If you look at the Rolfe Squares and the historic fabric of our mixed use neighborhood centers is already well above 15 units per acre. So one of the goals of this plan, one of the parts of what we're trying to do with this math is to be able to yield enough units in the new transit-oriented development zone
Okay.
on Elmwood that we wouldn't have to make any changes to many of the neighborhoods.
Right. So I just want to make clear though, is like when statewide planning, say, I don't want statewide plan to come back and say, well, how many units we're going to have here? Okay. And I know that on one of these pages I have here, they said they want at least 15 units per acre. So I think we need to say
At
something
least.
here has to be, at least 15 units
Yeah,
per acre. And then we
usually,
make it like, we have to get public input about how much it can be. But we have to say, I think 15 units per acre.
yeah,
in some
I
form
would,
to comply, because I don't want the state to say that you're not doing one thing. It's on page, excuse me.
yeah, because 15 units per acre is just below the threshold to have a functioning transit-oriented development zone.
That was,
So we could say at least 15 units per acre
I think so. I think so. For at least for the purposes of
of the TOD.
this thing for the hearing on next week.
Okay.
On the goals, and I'm just. On policy H-1, it says maintain zoning densities that reflect planned municipal service levels and natural resource constraints. I'd say maintain zoning densities that reflect current neighborhood character, planned municipal services, and natural resource constraints. All right.
Okay.
And the last one, okay, these are two questions. There's actually a question, then there's two more. On policy goal H-12, It says encourage inclusion of affordable housing consistent with smart growth goals. Can you just, people use these buzzwords.
Yeah,
So
that
I'd
is
like to know
one,
what people mean when they use a buzzword.
that one we've brought forward from the last comprehensive plan. That one's not new.
Okay,
We could definitely rephrase it to not use a buzzword if you like, but this is one that
yeah, I just
we
like.
did not
See,
change.
because what
since
happens is
the
that you
existing
put something
plan.
in the plan and then everyone says, well, that's what this means and this means to me.
Yeah.
And then everybody argues about what something means, you know, that kind of
And
stuff.
there's probably no definition
Right,
here
so
or elsewhere
if it
in
can,
this
if it
plan.
can work without a buzzword that I don't know is defined somewhere in the plan, I prefer not to use it. I mean, I think I know what smart growth generally means, but again, unless you're gonna tell me what it means, then just the goals of the comp plan and the affordable housing goals, state affordable housing goals, I know what they are. H13, we say require conservation type subdivisions. I prefer encourage, just because there may be situations where requiring may be problematic.
Okay.
And then the last one is on the next page, it's H-11. The last sentence, I'm okay with considering a pilot for Ward 3. I have a concern about where some historic buildings have no off-street parking. I just want to delete the phrase where some historic homes have no street. Are we saying that we're going to not require off-street parking at all?
No, I'm just saying that the place where the pilot's going to take place is a neighborhood where some of the homes have no off-street parking.
Okay. All right, so that's, okay, I see what you're doing now. It's a descriptive rather than a
Yeah, it's a
proscriptive.
descriptor
Okay,
of what, it's sort of an explanation of why we chose that neighborhood.
right, okay. All right, those were my minor changes overall, Director. If my colleagues have some other suggestions or change, can talk about that. Of course, you guys can talk about my changes and say I don't like them, you know, but I'm just trying to make it smooth and fast on a nice.
Or questions too.
Or comments or questions. Commissioner Lampier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize. I have not had much opportunity to go through this to any great detail, but I do recall that somewhere in there, and please correct me, Director, if I'm wrong on this, that there was a statement that non-conforming uses would be pretty much just accepted, I guess is the way to put it. I think it was when discussing existing zoning on site as opposed to what the zoning requires. And there was a statement that would encompass non-conforming uses. My understanding is that there are two kinds of non-conforming uses. There are legal non-conforming uses and not legal non-conforming uses. Is it your intention that just the legal non-conforming uses would be allowed and accepted, or had we not really contemplated that?
I think just legal non-conforming uses.
So I would just ask if that's the case, that we just make an amendment to that section, and I apologize that I don't have it in front of me. I
No,
will
that's
have
good.
it.
It's good. It's not in this housing element. It is in our, I believe in our regulations. But we can add it to the housing element because that we do have a, that has been a longstanding policy to, you know, if it's been a triple decker since 1945, gets to continue to be a triple decker as long as it's continually in use as a triple decker.
Correct, as opposed to someone using something that is only supposed to be a two-family and it's a three-family, so it's not a legal non-conforming use. So I would just like to be able to distinguish that, and I'll review it and have an amendment ready for our meeting. But just to give you a heads up. And the other concern that I had at this point was just a reduction of the off-street parking requirement. And I'm not adverse to that everywhere, but I think we need to be a little more detailed or limited in how we describe that. Because I would agree that in some places it may work, but in others it may not. So it's not something I would want to do broad brush or as a matter of right, but I think it would need to be done a little more strategically.
Thank you, Commissioner Lanfear. And I think, Director, we have it as a pilot in this thing. So obviously that is a kind of, that would go into deciding where we do this pilot. It's in Ward 3. We're in Ward 3. And then number 2, does it work or not? I mean, that's the whole thing, to see if it could work. Whether or not it can work is a whole other conversation, but putting it in the plan for the possibility of a pilot in a part of Ward 3 to see if it can work. I think it's, once we implement it, we may find the difficulties of implementing this thing, but we'll see.
When I think Commissioner Lanfear is not just referring to the pilot that would allow residential parking permits on street overnight, but also to allowing less than two cars per unit in some multifamily developments.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Are you mentioning that?
Yes, it's
Oh,
in
okay.
H11, and as
Okay.
it says there, to reduce parking requirements to 1 or 1.5 parking spaces per housing unit where this is sufficient to meet the needs.
Right.
And I think even that phrase, where this is sufficient to meet the needs, in whose opinion?
Right.
And what
Can go a
are
little
those needs?
deeper.
So I again, and I can see places where that would be appropriate, but I can also see neighborhoods where that wouldn't be appropriate.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that I would necessarily disagree with that, but I would want to do it in a more strategic way.
Yeah, and
based-
I think that there's where the owner's going to, the builder's going to continue to own and operate it. They have every incentive to estimate their parking needs correctly, but if anywhere we're building it to sell, there could be an incentive for them to underestimate their parking requirements. Because they wouldn't know what they would be necessarily.
And also, I think there's a difference when you say per housing unit, because there are some units that are much bigger than others and naturally will gravitate toward having more people and more vehicles
Right.
versus housing units that are smaller, and you can better estimate the needed
Mhm.
vehicle parking spaces.
And the location with transit proximity, if there isn't transit in that area, then it's not as plausible that people would have only 1 car per household.
I mean, I was gonna say this, to touch on Commissioner Lanfear's point, and now I understand it better. We have approved, that's the equivalent of 1.5 parking units for a multifamily apartment, but they have been done on bus routes. And it was part of like Knight's Corner. There's another one I'm forgetting, I think, yeah, the bowling alley, Legion Bowl. So to me, if we went to 1.5, I would feel a little more comfortable, because that's actually what I think the correct number is in general. And it would be in areas that is close to, or at least on a bus route.
Mhm.
That would be the changing of the language, I think, to try to address Commissioner Lanfear's concern. There may be more you want to put in there, but as a minimum, I think it's not 1, it's 1.5. And it would be in areas that are on a transit bus route or in close proximity to 1, because that would limit it significantly to me.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for the transit-oriented development, that's where
That's where it would be.
you're hoping to get more
Yeah.
units and less parking fields.
Right, right. Okay. That's it for you for now? Okay. Anything else from my colleagues? Okay. Going to the next element in this is future land use map.
Yeah, we don't have the map ready. We're working on it.
Okay.
We will, I'm I'm optimistic we might have something to show you at their next meeting, but it'll still need lots of public input. It's something that's going to take public input to,
Well, I was going to say, in regards to the future land use map, we approved our future land use map in our last comp plan. Basically is reflected in the appendix. Basically, everything that is zoned appropriately is zoned, and then there's others that they asked to change, okay? So, and I think in the plan, and I can't recall this specifically, I think there's a map in the plan, or at least an image of a map that says of what the future land use is. Even if I'm wrong about that, it's basically taking what we have for the future land use map and making very small changes, except for maybe this transit thing, is what I was thinking. Because we have to get this moving, because we have to get it to the council by the end of September.
right? So we've taken a real deep dive in the new categories that are required by statewide planning.
Oh, I see, okay, yeah,
To separate out the open space into 4 separate categories.
Okay. because that's what's taking up some of the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
and also we're reflecting we're going to show areas that are completely within the floodway or the 1% floodplain as being special flood hazard areas rather than showing them as the underlying zone. And I think that's important because we have a big industrial area that's not really an industrial area
Right. Okay.
because it's not developable. And I think it's really important once you do that, you can really see that we have 2 major industrial areas, Howard and Western Cranston.
Okay. Again, like I've talked to you before about this, I know it's a bit challenging, but I'm trying to get, as you know, the goal is to get this to the council by the end of
Mhm.
September for their
Yeah, no, and
introduction.
I apologize for the delay. We're actually behind on a number of things, including the required transition to the e-government portal. That's a big load on the department right now too.
Okay. Next is schedule of ordinances for comp plan implementation. What's that about?
So we're just double checking that all the ordinance, so we're required, I'm highlighting for you that we're required in our comp plan to have a schedule of ordinances that that we think we need to implement, we need to enact to implement the comp plan. So where we're going to do that is just to make sure that all the ordinances that are referenced in the text of the comp plan end up in the action section. So right after the policies, there are actions.
Okay.
So for example, create a transit supportive mixed use zone along Elmwood Avenue, Broad Street and Warwick Avenue. Boom, it's right there. Enact inclusionary zoning. Boom, it's right there. So that and this is something we need to they just are just requiring us to be specific. And one of the things that Cranston really fell behind in enacting ordinances to implement its comp plan. Some of the things in here, like the conservation development districts, have been in the comp plan for 20 years.
Mhm.
So I think we need to be,
Yep.
I just want to make sure we're clear about what we're planning to do. And if it's something we've decided we don't want to do, we should probably back off and not say we're going to do it.
Right. Just one thing on the schedule of ordinances and implementation. I say this about the housing plan element specifically. Because this is presumably gets approved by the council and the mayor and is sent to statewide planning. Statewide planning, of course, could come back with questions or suggested changes. Implementation of the housing plan elements, to me, should be factored in a review by the statewide planning to see, because I don't want to implement something and then have statewide planning say, no good. Then I have to go back to the council and make a whole bunch of changes again. I'd rather go to the council one time and say, we're implementing it, it's consistent with the comp plan, the state has approved it. Do you see what I'm saying? So You don't understand what I'm saying?
So the inclusionary zoning bylaw would be typically included as an appendix in the comp plan because we refer to it
Yeah.
and that's one of our, that's a specific proposal we're
Right.
putting in there.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to take a look at the text of the draft inclusionary zoning bylaw because we reference it directly in the plan and it's sort of a package deal.
No, I understand that. I don't have a problem telling statewide planning, this is their draft ordinance. What I'm saying is
Mhm.
implementation is, I do not see it as making sense to have the city council adopt ordinances until I know, or we know, statewide planning finds it to be sufficient and approves the plan and doesn't have further changes. That's the point I'm making.
I don't agree that we can't take this, we can take a step forward with the inclusionary zoning, even if we know that,
I understand you may disagree. My point is, I do not want to go to the council and say, adopt this, and then 3 months later, being told by the statewide planning that's not good enough, and then I got to go make changes again. It's a waste of time for the city council. It's a waste of time for all of us. So when the state tells us this is okay, we can implement it. Until they tell us it's okay, we got to wait and see if they have changes. This is like a compliance. To me, this is something of a compliance filing. And if the state doesn't see it that way, that's fine. But to me, we send this in. This is our implementation schedule. Once you tell us it's approved, we implement these housing elements.
with all due respect, will fall behind. I mean, we know that the inclusionary zoning is a required element, and the sooner we enact it, the sooner we start gaining units through that process. We don't get an extension of time based on how long it takes us to get state approval. We have 5 years to meet this goal. And if we know some steps that we're ready to take now, we should go ahead and take them so we can start making progress towards the goal. Last year, the year before, we permitted like 33 units in the city of Cranston. We need to, what's the number, 250? We have to get from 33 to 250, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a growth curve where we ramp up, but it takes more than a year for your enacted ordinance to be reflected in developers' plans for the city. So it's a very slow moving process.
I understand it's a slow moving process for some, but we have approved by this commission in the past has approved about 600 units, of which 76 I think are affordable. They've been approved at master plan and preliminary plan stage. This inclusionary zoning ordinance is not going to affect that. That can come on in line anytime, including print works at 100 units. So my point in this is statewide planning wants this to happen, and I'm okay with that, and we will do that. But if the implementation schedule is somewhat dependent on what statewide planning approves, the faster they move, the faster we can move. I don't understand what would be the difficulty of them moving quickly to review something. They have a certain time limit, I get it by statute. They have notice and all that stuff. And we're moving quickly to implement our stuff. So if everyone works quickly, this will get implemented quickly. But I don't understand the idea of, I'm going to implement something. I'm going to go to elected officials. I'm going to implement, tell them this is what we got to do. And then 6 months later or 3 months later, they come in and say, no, not good enough, got to do this, got to do that. This is especially in an interesting environment. So that's what I would say. Yeah, by the way, I've been going back and forth with the director. Anything else, people? Go ahead, Commissioner Mazzulli.
Thank you. As a former member of the city council, I would also have to agree with President Farias on how it is difficult sometimes to get things through. So if you have to go more than once for the same thing, it might end up being very frustrating. So I would suggest that as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Lanfear.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question on the agenda item, it says discussion of zoning ordinance amendments. Are there when I look at this, it appears to me that there might be two classes of zoning ordinance amendments we're talking about. One is the comprehensive list that you're referencing that needs to be attached to the comp plan that goes to statewide planning for approval, that has to reflect the proposed ordinances needed to implement what is in the plan, correct?
Right, we have to, in order for them to approve this plan, we have to convince them that we're proposing actions that will result in the number of units, will plausibly result in the number of units we say that we are planning to get.
The ordinance is necessary to actually implement what your goals
It
and
is, and
policies are.
the details might affect the yield.
And then
Some of the ordinances, though, we're going to require more work, like the transit-oriented development zone itself. We can say in here, we're going to do it. We'll put an estimate. We have an estimated number of units, but we know that in order to do it, I put in a grant to have some consulting help us do a much more, consultative process and to look at the different stretches of the area. We're not going to, adopting the comp plan doesn't rezone things. There's still more work to make sure we get the details right before we enact a zoning change. That, I
And
don't
then-
underestimate that as needing more work.
And then I think there's a second class here that of ordinance amendments that relate to what you believe are necessary to comply with new state law.
Yes.
Now, is that, to the extent that it doesn't involve a comp plan change that needs to be implemented, that new set of ordinances does not have to go with our comp plan, correct? So those could be set aside for a
They
period
could,
of
although they
time.
will free up a lot of time for the planning department to work on other things.
Yeah, so the second group that we're gonna hear later, if we get to it, which we will get to. Yeah, that I call those are basically mandatory changes, either from last year or this year, or stuff that's coming up July, or that we are implementing to make things easier for the planning department, more for the building department, and for the consumer, because now they're looking at our ordinance, last year's state law, this year's state law. So most of those are just essentially to comply with state law, and also to make things a little bit easier. We put getting rid of certified mail and things like that. So so that second group would be done irrespective of this. Now, would part of that second group yield housing? Yeah, I would say yes, because there's some things regarding unmerger and things like that. But as far as part of this plan, they're really two separate things that are happening simultaneously.
And the ones that are mandatory by state law, even if we don't make a zone change, somebody can, they're already in effect, so it just happens. So that's the second, what you're kind of talking about now, Commissioner Lampier, is a discussion of zoning ordinance amendments. That's a separate thing from ordinances to adopt recommendations in the comp plan.
Yeah.
They're two separate things. Any other inquiries or comments? Okay. Last one here is various other amendments to complete state submission checklist. I know you've spoken to me, Director, about, there was a few missing maps, and I think they're now on the website. For
They
example. Where are we with these, I call missing checklist items?
There is with the exception of the future land use map and any changes in the land use element itself,
Okay,
they're all there in that memo, which
okay,
I updated today. So it's ready for the hearing on
next week.
September 2nd.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions about this element of the comp plan and all these other things underneath it? I skipped actual inclusionary zoning. I may have to think about, I think I may have had a suggestion on amendment or two on it, but generally I thought it was fine. But I have to look at it in more detail. I know you're saying that we submit the comp plan with the draft ordinance as an appendix. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and we've done that before. And your point
That's
about,
okay.
are you locked into implementing it? No. I mean, it's,
I'm just-
nobody's going to come back and get us if we continue to refine our inclusionary zoning
Yeah,
ordinance after the comp plan is submitted.
For example, if we, like, give you an example, like the transit thing, we put in 15 units per acre. And all of a sudden the state says, no, it's gotta be 20.
It's going to have to be 20.
Well, I'm just saying that as an
yeah.
example, okay? Then I gotta go back to the city council and make all these changes. I'd like to go to the city council one time. That's what I'm saying. Okay, before we move to the next item, I want to ask my fellow colleagues this quick question, which is, this is a workshop, so we don't need to take public comment, but I know there are people here in the public that would like to speak. Does anyone have a problem if we give each person 3 minutes? Okay, so I was just gonna say, so I can see all of you clearly, I'll give each of you 3 minutes this week. You know that next week, go to town, say what you want to say, but I wanted to give you 3 minutes at this point each for whatever you want to say about the comp plan. I'm just trying to make this meeting as quick as possible for everybody, okay? So just come up, however you signed up, and tell me what you want to say. I think, Bob, did you sign up first? Or you signed up? You didn't sign up. Okay, all right. Just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Annette Bourne, 51 Community Drive. Thank you, members of the Plan Commission and the planning staff who worked so hard on these documents. I want to start with one clarifying question. Is the intention to submit this chapter ahead and separate from the entire Phase 2 comprehensive plan?
The intent is to take the comp plan we've already approved and amend it for this and to get it in quickly, and then we can have further changes as part of Phase 2. Okay?
So all the other chapters are also being,
Will be reviewed,
updated
will
right
be
now?
at a next year, for example, as part of Phase 2. The reason this is being moved so quickly is that
No,
I understand the
I
reason why.
understand that,
Okay,
correct.
thank
So
you.
this is just going to be inserted as the housing chapter to the Phase 1 plan that we.
Correct.
Got it, okay. So I have not had time to pour over in detail, but I will be before next week's meeting. I would have really liked to have thought that we would have gotten through all of the ward workshops. I went to one in Ward 3 and Ward 1, and I thought the intention was that we would get through all of the wards workshops and incorporate all of that thoughtful commentary and planning. I saw several members of you there at various meetings. Obviously, the staff was there. And I know there was great interest and thought, visuals, a lot of transit stuff. So I'm not sure I understand the reasons why this got rushed, but I think that's going to really diminish the value of this plan to the nearly 80,000 people who live in Cranston. So my goal really in looking over some of what's been presented, it does appear that some of the goals are actually in opposition to each other. Like we are saying we want more housing of different types and affordability, but we aren't going to change any density or that nefarious word character. I'm a math person. When I used to read these plans, I'd need to see the actual quantifiable evidence of how the numeric goals on page 5.8 would actually be achieved. Generally in the past, I would see historic subdivision for the last 5 years. So I would know that 15% would yield X number of units. I would see adaptive reuse, which is a great tool. I would see named, you know, the Chester Barrows School, which I live near, and a number that appears comfortable, you know, for that project, but I'm not actually seeing that. And I apologize if it's because I haven't really been able to look at it that deeply yet. One note I would like to make at this time, which I think honestly will give you some trouble with statewide planning, as it is not a smart growth, which I'm surprised to say you don't know that term, given that our entire Land Use 2025 is premised on smart growth. The policy H2 which is to maintain rural densities where desired, regardless of availability of improvements to municipal infrastructure, such as public water, sewer, and roads. Cranston is one of 39 municipalities in the smallest state. We don't have a lot of roads and water and public infrastructure, so that to maintain even half-acre densities and such, where there is public water, is a waste of that land for our state as a whole. So, and beyond that, the role of the Housing Commission, which I'm glad to see continues to be named in the strategies and how to achieve it. I have been in consistent contact with the City Council because there are still 3 vacancies on the Housing Commission. So whatever emphasis you all could put on that, we have 2 members of the Housing Commission with us here tonight. So I know they are eager to meet again as soon as they have 3 more colleagues to meet with. So thank you very much. I hope I haven't exceeded my time.
No, you have not. Thank you. Just because you made a comment about my, about smart growth. I know what smart growth means. It's just that everybody seems to interpret it in different ways. And so
Well, if they
it's
were
like,
to
it's
end
like due
2025.
it's like due process. It's like one of these terms. So that's why I said that. In regards to your other comment about wards 1 and 3, we had workshops, yes, and we incorporated those ideas by having this transit corridor. Okay. All right.
But there are other wards, and the intention was to get to all those wards.
And it was the intention, and we can do it in phase 2. And unfortunately, the state law changes every year, so I got to move. Thank you.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name's Amy Raynone, 67 Valley Street. Full disclosure, I am a employee of Rhode Island Housing, but I am here representing myself, not the agency. I am also a member of the Housing Commission. I would echo Annette's concerns around public engagement. I know that there's been a lot of talk about this phase 2, but I think that given the importance that's being placed on this document being approved by the state, that it's really critical that the public have an opportunity to react to it, and they haven't to date. In particular, I was disappointed that the members of the Housing Commission were not notified in any way of these documents or of this meeting. I am going to speak generally because I also have not had a chance to really look at these documents and absorb them, as it sounds like a number of you have not either. It is a resource. There are some great folks on the commission, even though there are some vacancies, and I hope that moving forward, the city takes advantage of that expertise. There were a couple of things in particular in my brief review of the documents that jumped out at me. I also really was looking at the goals and policies associated with preserving density rather than increasing density. Just looking at around the city of Cranston, there's plenty of places where, and it talked about character and preserving character, and I get that, but there's a lot of places in Cranston where you can increase density without changing character at all, because the existing character of the community, you can't build that anymore because the zoning doesn't allow it. So, I mean, even just going to the built environment zoning level would significantly increase the opportunities for housing development in the city. And that's an easy win with no impact on the character, since that is the existing character, in fact. Another thing that jumped out at me was that it seemed really homeownership heavy. We have a lot of rental needs in this city, a lot of low-income folks who are not going to be able to afford homeownership, even with some of the subsidized homeownership opportunities. So I would really love to see more emphasis on rental opportunities in the city. Along those lines, I was really surprised that there was not a single goal or strategy that spoke to homelessness. At a time when affordability is just through the roof, homelessness has been spiking. We're in the maybe second, third largest community in the state right now. It just seems like a really kind of stark that there was no mention whatsoever of homelessness in the plan to date. It seemed like there were some opportunities that weren't incorporated, things like looking at municipally owned land for opportunities for affordable housing development, vacant schools, things like that, or identifying just parcels in the city where you want to see development, where you want to be concentrating development, and looking at whether or not the existing zoning or the proposed zoning is incentivizes development in those areas or facilitates housing development in those areas. So anyway, like I said, I have not, and I apologize if any of the things I say are inconsistent with the full documents. Again, I have not had the opportunity to read them fully, but I intend to do so and will submit full comments based on that thorough review. But given I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to share some initial thoughts, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Renaud. And I just want to make 2 quick points. The municipal land thing is in there as 3.1 right now. We have schools and municipal land. It doesn't say which ones, but it says an inventory and about schools. On the housing, on the role of the Housing Advisory Commission, I may be misstating the name. It has not been functioning, I believe, for quite some time. And that's one reason why the involvement was not there. So.
Yeah, and I would point to what Annette said in terms of the council has not yet appointed folks
I
to have
understand
a
that.
quorum. However, you do have sitting members of
Okay.
the commission with significant housing experience. And I think that they could be a real resource and they could meet and talk with you irregardless of the
Well,
lack of a quorum.
Right. So I was going to say, I'm glad to take your comments, whatever you have in writing for next time. Because like I said, there's a need to get this adopted and sent to the state. We should have, this whole comp plan. So, okay, thank you. Next.
I'm Sam Brusco, 11 Alhambra Circle. Let me see, let me just go. Again, I apologize. It's kind of a theme. I didn't have much warning about this. But I'll discuss things that stood out to me. Character and density is one of the goals. It's, let me see, 2 of the first 4 words. Those are dog whistles to NIMBYism. And I really think you don't need to include that because they already know, and it's just going to encourage it. Let me see. In some of the documents, it talks about Cranston being partly urban. Where? I can't. I've lived in cities, and I can't think of any place in Cranston that's urban. Let me see. Oh, yeah. The ability for, kids who grow up in Cranston to be able to afford later in Cranston. How? I mean, you all know that housing prices are rising ridiculously. Actually, in respect to that, is there anything in here about corporate ownership of single family homes? Is there?
No, because I don't think we have any jurisdiction over that.
Okay. Airbnb? Same?
Governed by state law.
Okay. Okay. Oh, the city's assets and land. Okay, we got Chester Barrows. I was wondering if there's, what else is there?
Waterman School and Arlington.
Oh, Waterman's being closed?
Waterman is closed.
Okay, nobody told me. Sorry about that.
Did I say Arlington or did I mean Gladstone? The old Gladstone's been taken down. It's Arlington, right? I'm sorry. Arlington will be closed. Okay.
Arlington, not Waterman? And Waterman.
Yeah, there are 3 schools.
What about Bain?
Bain is still with us.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we were talking about parking. In in real cities, you get charged for parking. And I don't know if that's not allowed within Cranston ordinances, but it should be. If you rent an apartment and you want 3 cars, well, you rent 3 spaces. And otherwise you rent 2 and figure out from there. So it's more a matter of putting a price tag on parking because it is a real resource. Does this have anything to do with commercial use?
There is an element of something of the effect of like taking, like mixed use zone, like having residential mixed in with commercial.
Okay.
There's an element in there about that.
All right, well, for commercial parking requirements, a great idea that I heard was instead of minimum of so many spaces, which is usually the worst possible scenario, times 2. It could be changed very easily to maximum of that ridiculous number. And, you can have more effective use of the land in commercial areas. Okay, I think that covers it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, make public comment.
Good evening, Christina Brown, 217 Armington Street, Ward 1. Thank you for the time to speak, Chair. I just want to thank the Planning Department for the work they've put into this and all the members of the commission. I want to reinforce what Annette and Amy said regarding the public process, as well as the involvement of the Housing Commission. I'm an appointee of the Housing Commission, and I did not learn about this chapter being reviewed until late this afternoon in a busy work and family day. Just came from the open house at Cranston East with my son. I just want to speak to a few things that stood out to me as well. I guess primarily the comprehensive plan is supposed to set the development pattern for the city for the next 10 years. I believe that this is something that really does warrant robust input to everyone who lives in the city, as well as people like myself who have volunteered our housing expertise to participate in this process. And I do hope that the final version of the plan will include the other remaining wards. I also feel very strongly that looking at the demographic data that the planning department has pulled together, we know that the state of Rhode Island is moved over into this threshold as an aging community. Our city still has a large number of children, 18 and under. What you decide in this plan and what you as Planning Commission members decide when development proposals come before you, you are deciding the fate of who can live here in the future. And what I see over and over again when I come to these meetings about development is that Cranston doesn't want any more families. I take that personally because I am and I have chosen to raise my kids here. And with the rising cost of housing, I have seen my neighbors, particularly over the pandemic, who have lived in Cranston for generations, have to leave the city because the housing prices and the taxes are going up. And I have seen new families from Boston or other areas who can work remotely and make higher incomes coming into the city. You are all appointed by the public to represent us and the next 10 years of the city. And not building new housing is going to impede that the types of working families who have always made Cranston what it is, the ability to stay here, and it is going to continue to cause displacement. Additionally, environmental concerns are great. My neighborhood is near the water. A lot of neighborhoods are experiencing flooding. New homes are built to 2025 building code, environmental standards that have many, many checks and balances. And to impede new development in the city is to make it so existing residents whose homes may be taken by flood or fire have no place to live, as well as the concerns of an aging population that would need accessible units that are safer and easier to maintain, smaller units, apartment buildings, et cetera. I just want to paint that broad stroke picture because I have not been able to dig into the details of what's in here, but those are all elements that I hope you're taking into consideration as you look at this document and as you make your decisions going forward on housing development. Things like Mulligan's Island, the proposals that are before you, these are important housing stock options that can help mitigate some of the things that we are facing. And none of it will happen overnight, and it needs to be taken very seriously. I also want to add that parking minimums, parking reform, there was a note in here of like whether 1 parking spot per unit versus 1.5. Across the country, parking reform, you know, builders will build what they think is needed. If you set a maximum amount of parking spaces that are needed, they'll have to do that. But the market really does cater to what is needed. If you look at the demographic data, our household sizes are shrinking. People who are living in apartments really don't need more than 1 parking spot. And that is better for land conservation, for stormwater runoff, for minimizing impervious surfaces, and building resilient housing. So I just want to say, I hope you continue to look at these things and be the best stewards of the land that we have in Cranston, and think about who you want to live here in the future as you make these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that leaves you, Mr. Murray.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I found myself in agreement with much of the speakers who came before me. Many of you have heard me say this many times. The answer to more housing is to build more housing. And we are, as someone who comes at this from a different perspective than some housing advocates, for example, who have very legitimate and worthwhile goals and concerns. Historically, the members of this commission know I represent developers, applicants for projects, and I live every day with the process that happens after this commission acts on something. It is a marathon, it's not a sprint, and it is a challenge. I want to underscore that, despite the best efforts of everybody within the structure of government to try and bring projects online. I would be remiss if I didn't say at the outset, I've tried to stay away from the planning department for the last couple of weeks because every time I showed up, they were deeply involved working on this product that's before you. It's commendable. And I legitimately felt bad even asking questions on little things just because it took them away from what they were trying to do. I also think that this commission should be commended for on a beautiful August night, being here in the numbers you are to hear these comments and to consider these things. That being said, respectfully, I don't think the last Tuesday in August, when people are getting ready to go back to school. There was an open house at my alma mater, Cranston East, tonight. My granddaughter had her kindergarten orientation at Glen Hills tonight. There's a lot going on at the end of the summer. People are trying to grab the last few rays of sunshine. And I commend these people for being here. There should be others here. Frankly, there's a whole panoply of stakeholders that haven't really participated in this. And it's nobody's fault, their fault. But, I feel responsible sometimes, to share information with people, whether it's the Builders Association or, just clients that I represent, to let them know, hey, this is what Cranston's thinking about. That being said, I also question, and I know, and I respect the chairman immensely, and I know he's trying to do the right thing, and he's trying to accelerate this to get it to the state. And, you know, that's all commendable. If the intention of this commission is to try and act on something next Tuesday night, because I know there's no votes tonight, I gotta be honest with you, I don't think it's fair to anybody to the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend to try and expedite these things through. There's a lot of discussion that needs to happen on these documents, just the time to go through them. You know, I mean, I was exhausted just printing the stuff on the website without even reading it. And so I question just, you know, I think we should take a deep breath here and really think about what we're doing and how we're doing it. I have a lot of comments. Some, I come at this differently than some people, but, you know, the goals, you know, the State Housing 2030 plan, the goals that are contained in some of this work that's before you this evening, I gotta be honest with you, I think they're pie in the sky. They're not gonna happen. If we feel comfortable, you know, that we should pass something, all right, let's pass it. But I am telling you that, you know, the number of units that's being estimated, either market rate or low and moderate income units, not going to happen, despite the best efforts of everybody here. In 2022, I think this commission approved the Cranston Printworks, my project, okay? That started out as 129 units. We had to take down the building. It's going to be 100 units. I think it was 2022. We do not yet have the building permits to start the 100 units. With the assistance of the planning department, with the building department, you know, which staffing is a whole other issue. Let's not go there tonight. You know, we're getting incrementally little. I get a temporary service permit. If I, you know, I can get a self-storage permit because that's not, you know, in the flood zone. We do, you know, we just got last week with the assistance of Mr. Correo, the final sign off from Veolia and the Public Works Department for the sewer connection. Okay. That was a tennis match of about a year going back and forth with comments. The building, and I don't mean to vent, but Brady Sullivan presented building plans for the Cranston Printworks, and the building department basically said, we don't have the time, the staff, or the expertise to review these plans. They required us to go hire a third-party co-consultant at our expense, okay, to review the plans. Yesterday, I got the latest tennis ball hit back. We're getting close, but I want you to appreciate that this process of from concept to groundbreaking to ribbon cutting is a mammoth undertaking. And I just, I'm open to any ideas, and I don't want to belittle the goals and the numbers we're talking about. Realistically, I don't think they're achievable. And if we need to pass something to show that we're in conformity with the state housing plan, that's fine. But August 27th, tonight, I'm just letting you know, this is all make-believe. And that's with tremendous respect for Jonas and Beth and Brianna, what they're trying to do here.
But Bob, these numbers are coming from the state. I mean,
I understand that.
So
Why, so a bad idea at the state shouldn't become a bad idea at the city.
however, the state is shoving it down our throats, Bob. And we have to comply with what the state has to do.
Stephen, I appreciate you defending the staff and the commission. I'm just telling you that they're going to be voting on something that is make-believe. So I've said enough. You can.
Well, then, did you testify at the state that it was make-believe?
No, Steve, I apologize. I have a life. I have a law practice. I don't.
You do not, Bob. You're here every night.
Did you go testify?
Can I,
didn't, because it's make-believe.
Can I make a comment?
Okay.
Commissioner Perez?
Let me just wrap up.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Bob.
Because I've made my point. Yeah, I have a lot of comments on these other ordinances and things like that. They're a work in progress. I understand that. They need some refinement, in my opinion, not just because it's Bob Murray saying it, but I just think the wording and what's intended, you know, I read things one way, people read, Steve Marcelo might read it a different way. But that being said, all I'm saying is let's take a breath here and not jam this down the city council, the mayor, or anybody else until everybody here has had their say, everybody's had a chance to, you've had a chance to listen to the practical side of these things and the very worthy comments that come from housing advocates who, you know, I mean, I can go on about density. You know, until we get real about density, we're not going to increase housing, okay? And when I have a client that comes to me with an undersized lot, and I got to get my calculator out and figure out, you know, the size of the lot, I got to be honest with you, that's not the approach we should be taking here. If there's 3 blocks of 5,000 square foot lots with houses on them, and somebody has one, we should not be doing Herculean jumps to get somebody a building permit on a similar sized lot.
And we had an easy statute and the state changed the law. And now we have to go to their complex statute. We had a statute that if on the same side of the street, you look one way, you look the other way, and a lot would be unmerged. Now that we can't do that anymore. We got to do the whole oversized lot, 150%, and it has become unworkable. I agree with you, but we couldn't keep our old ordinance, Bob.
I didn't say to keep the old order. All I'm just trying to, when somebody comes to me with a proposal and I have to call the building official, the planning department, and then you to ask exactly what type of relief we need because I can't figure it out, that's something wrong with the process.
I agree with you, but the state keeps changing the law every 6 months.
Okay, Mr. Murray, are you all set? We're all set. Somebody has to get the last word, you know.
No,
Okay, thank you. Director?
I just wanted to thank Bob Murray for bringing up the issue of process and the friction and drag and the costs that imposes on the property owners and developers in Cranston. We have a lot of work to do, not just in the planning department, but citywide to reduce friction and reduce drag and reduce delay. And we're working very diligently with our powers to do that. But I recognize, as Bob does, that we have quite a long way to go in streamlining our processes. And I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to feel like we're going to have one fix and tie it all up with a bow. I think it's going, there's years worth of work of improvements ahead of us, and it's not going to all be one and done. But thank you, Bob.
Mr. Lima, is there anyone online that'd like to make public comment? Okay,
Correct. There was no public comment
all right,
online.
thank you. Just a quick thing, and then I'll open it to my colleagues before we wrap this up and go to the next topic, is I wish where I'm not in this position right now, to all the people here, where I feel that I have to move this chapter quickly. We had a comp plan approved by this council last year. Staff made a decision under Mr. Pizzullo not to pursue state approval at that time. They were going to wait until the second phase was completed. However, since then, there were changes in state law that I feel it's in our best interest to move this as quickly as reasonably possible, knowing that further changes can be made. That is the reason, and in good faith, that I'm trying to do two things: move this to get state approval, and to sort of respond to Mr. Murray's comment and echoing a little bit of Mr. Marcello's, the solicitor. These are the state goals. I recognize the difficulty of reaching those goals, but we at the state local level are making our best faith effort to make those goals, and we'll just see what happens. Any of my colleagues have anything they want to add? Commissioner Renzulli?
Thank you. I very much so agree with Mr. Murray that this is the end of the summer and it's difficult to get people here. So I might suggest that the city council seems like they're having a lot of special meetings lately. So if we need more time, and we can't have it on their exact meeting date, we can have a meeting just about this. If the Housing Commission has not met because they don't have enough people to have a quorum, that's a problem. It's not, we can't do anything about it, but the city council needs to. And obviously, there are people here who have intelligent things to say, so I hope that they can submit written comment after they're able to digest this material. Thank you.
It's been in the newspaper, advertised for September 2nd, so they certainly will have time to submit written comments if they so desire. We can take that into account. Any other comments? Commissioner Coop, Vice Chairman Coop, Vice President, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm getting there. I'm a little tired already at about 20 of.
Coop is close enough.
Yeah,
I'll
Coop.
get
Go
it.
ahead.
I reserved any comments because apparently, like other people in the room, I haven't really digested all of this. But I agree with a number of the comments that were made tonight, specifically on the density question, because when I look at this goal, I see many of the debates we've had about density over the past 6 or 7 years that I've been here summarized down into one sentence. We've spent many hours debating density versus additional housing. And I liked your comment, Mr. President, that smart growth is like due process. You know, density versus more housing is like trying to define due process. So while I understand the need to get this done, and I agree with you to get this done, at some point, I think it would be in our best interest to give ourselves and the applicants some definitive guidance to put some guardrails on what is the appropriate change in density that we're willing to accept in order to allow more housing. And I don't expect to come to that consensus tonight or even probably in this phase of the project, but I do think we ought to think about coming up with some acceptable guardrails for that. You know, some of the other goals and actions, I agree, while we don't have a lot of discretion, I don't see them happening. But I also think it's unfair to put on this commission or even the city council blame for the lack of housing production in the city of Cranston. We can, within the confines of existing ordinances, confines of the existing comp plan, even within the new comp plan and whatever rules we set up, we can make it marginally easier, marginally more difficult. We can change things like, or we can ask the city council to change things like parking requirements. But ultimately, these are economic issues that are beyond our control. And for the 6 or 7 years that I've been here, I've seen a lot of very thoughtful debate and discussion. We've approved many more housing proposals than we've denied over those years. So, you know, I don't take it personally. I don't think it was meant personally, but I do think that we've strived to create a balance over the years. And while I don't like some of the things I read in this, I agree with you, Mr. President, that we should get something done now so we can get it in. But I do hope that we address some of these tough questions in the next phase.
Thank you, Vice President. And like I said, this was not my plan to do this way. I thought we'd be doing this at the end of the next year and so we'd have more time. But like I said, the state law changed. I felt that we need to move forward expeditiously, put something in that could work, and then we can fine tune and maybe make some changes as it goes on when we review other chapters. So altogether. All right. Is there any other comments or questions from Commissioner Renzulli?
Thank you. This is for the director. There was an outside contractor that helped with the first phase, correct? Are they completely phased out now, or are they still part of this? I can't remember the name of it. I know they're in Boston. They did a separate website, separating the chapters, making it a little easier for people to read. I don't know if they're still with us at all.
They are still with us. They prepared 3 of the maps that are up on the website. That's definitely that's definitely something we should discuss further.
Yeah,
mean,
I
they're-
just want to
they're
make sure you have
basic-
the tools you need. I feel like in the past, it's been explained to us that you need more people than just the planning department because you're already a small, understaffed department and we have a lot of development coming in. We have long meetings, you have to prepare memos, I get it. So I just was wondering if we spent that money, I know we got a grant for it, and if there are more grants that the city council needs to procure in order to keep this contractor so that we can have a website that takes in public engagement and summarizes it and people who are doing this like full-time for us.
Yeah, that's. Let's talk more on that. Let's definitely talk more on that. We're almost a fully staffed department. We're having interviews tomorrow and God willing, we'll be a fully staffed department for a while. So,
Thank you.
mhm.
All right, is that it for this topic? And then we'll move to the next one, which is zoning ordinances. Okay. So this, the staff put on the agenda. This is I saw it the first time all of you did, essentially. And basically, it's a combination, what I would say is of compliance with state law changes, but for stuff that's gone beyond state law in certain areas. So the first question I have is actually for the solicitor. Have you reviewed this before we got this? The ordinance? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, last year we went through it. Sat down.
Okay. All right.
But that doesn't mean that it's perfect.
No. All right.
Just trying to make it easier for, really for applicants and for the younger planning people to be able to navigate our ordinance, again, without having to go to state law, to city ordinance, back and see what controls and when it controls. So we did our best in moving through this, not deviating from the definitions of state law. And it was reviewed a few times, but again, if the commission sees any errors, feel free to point them out.
Okay.
I would like to state too that I did make some additional edits and changes since last time you reviewed it, so I still need to send it to you for another review.
Sure.
Just so you know.
Okay, so, unfortunately, I focused most on the comp plan because of its urgency versus this, because it's not as urgent since it's already in place in state law. But I just want to make a couple of comments and maybe a couple of questions. First, I can tell this goes beyond state law in certain areas. So I'll start with the first one. A proposed amendment to the ordinances. It's a separate thing about the Development Plan Review Committee. And it's a complete deletion. Well, basically 14 pages of,
Correct.
and putting in about maybe a page and a half of general stuff. So is this required by state law?
This is, so DPR last year was made a required element. And then, in 2023, it was made required. In 2024, they undid that requirement. However, the way DPR is structured in state law and in model ordinances is to actually have most of the, because currently DPR, the entire ordinance is in our zoning ordinance. But typically, much of the design elements and like the stages of review, most of that really should be in the subdivision regulations. So if you look through the subdivision regulations, much of this was just moved over to the subdivision regulations. And what's in the zoning ordinance is basically an enabling a section.
Okay, so
And
what
this is more in line with state laws, more in line with the subdivision regulations. DPR is just a thing that we just haven't touched, even though the state law around it changed significantly about 2 years ago.
okay, so
So
I'm
my
gonna have,
short answer is yes, we need to take some action on
I
DPR.
agree we need to take some action, but I don't think we need to take as much action as what it says here. That's my sense.
Yes, so
right.
just to maybe make it a little bit easier. If you go to the draft zoning ordinances update, that's really kind of one set of changes.
Yeah.
And then the DPR, so they're split into two.
Yeah.
So obviously any comments to DPR can be separate than the first batch.
Right, so I'm looking at the second batch, which is DPR. The DPR changes in the second batch. I'm not aware that the state law required us to delete all this stuff. I really don't. I'll have to take,
Well,
you
it
have to,
didn't get removed, it got moved to the subdivision regulations, which is much more in line with state law
okay,
and how it's written.
okay, so the DPR, the way it's written here is a couple of things that I don't think is required by state law. First, you have no requirement that there's public notice for the meeting.
That is in the subdivision regulations.
Right. So right now, there's a public notice and a hearing requirement under the zoning code for DPR,
Correct.
right? So I'm going to tell you that unless state law said I cannot have a public hearing, that makes no sense to me to take that out.
The public hearing requirement is maintained, is just moved to the subdivision regulations, which would be much more in line with how.
I'm not going to ask the city council to make changes that don't amount to, it's like, it's over here in the regulations, it's not in the ordinance. So then I got to go to city council and say, I'm taking out a public notice requirement, but it's going to stay in the regulations. Who controls the regulations of the planning commission? The planning commission, so they can then take it out eventually. This is more like work.
But the meeting notice requirements for land developments and subdivisions are also in the subdivision regulations.
My
Not
point-
in the zoning ordinance, so it would be much more consistent.
My point is, I'm not comfortable asking city council members to change the zoning ordinance to get rid of public notice.
We can keep
hearings.
it in there.
Okay, so that's number one. Then we're gonna keep going. Next is, it says this thing about DBR waiving our subdivision regulations. No offense to the people on DBR, you
We
know,
do it all the time.
okay. If that's possible, but I thought like to waive our regulations, it would be the commission that should waive the regulations. The other thing here is, like I said, I'd have to look at all these changes and say, I'm going to go to the city council and say, I want you to delete 14 pages of zoning ordinance information and submit it and replace it with 5 or 6, basically a page and a half of stuff. And so a lot of it seems to be transferring. I can't figure out if this is a transfer of stuff that we do at the planning commission. I haven't figured that out yet, to the DPR. But the reason that the planning commission deals with it is that generally there are 3 things. One, the commission and zoning board deals with things because they are appointed by elected officials. 2, they have public comment as a requirement. So the public has direct input. These people are held accountable to public officials who are elected. DBR consists of, some of them are appointees of elected officials. Some of them are civil servants. And therefore, there's a less direct accountability to elected officials. So unless state law requires me to transfer all that jurisdiction over, I'm probably not going to do it. And second, asking the city council to do this, a complete rewrite will get their attention of this nature. This isn't some simple change. This isn't mandated by state law to the best of my knowledge. You want to make changes that conform with state law, that require it, no problem. But that's my initial, and I haven't had a time to look through all the state law. So like I said, I just reviewed it the first time today. Second,
So I'm just going to say this is consistent with what is in state law.
is it required?
And
Is it required, Mr. Boogerman?
DPR in itself isn't required.
Right. But the book, that's what I'm saying. All I care about is what is required.
So what Jonas is saying is that some of the changes are required, but we
Right.
could choose to go farther and eliminate DPR, but we find it to be a useful process.
No, the DPR would not be, I'm not talking about eliminating the committee. What I'm saying is for you to change how the committee is, its current jurisdiction and what it does, you'd have to
Which we're not
demonstrate,
changing.
you would have to demonstrate to me that is required by state law.
Maybe.
And I'm
Would-
saying like, I'm just going to demonstrate is that first time I'm reviewing this, looking at state laws, I'm looking at this quick.
Yeah, no, I mean, maybe regarding the DPR subdivision split, that might be a separate workshop that we can do. And the reason why is it's actually very complicated whether you go before, and I don't even understand it, whether you go before a technical review committee or development plan review and what you do and when you do it. While what the changes that Jonas, that we made here comply with state law, it might, again, that's a process question that, again, given the priorities of the comprehensive plan and I'll call it draft zoning updates #1, that I mean, we need to do. Maybe that might be another special meeting where we can sit down and see the interaction between the subdivision regulations and DPR. And again, Jonas is correct, how it was in our zoning code. And it really should be in our subdivision regulations. But again, given the bulk of items that we have to send to the city council, again, it's not going to be, a lot of these changes have gone back and forth over the last 24 months. It's not going to be the end of the world whether this is package #2 that gets submitted in October or November. But that, that's up to you guys.
Right.
It's not an easy fix. It's a little bit easier for Cranston because we had development plan review. Some towns didn't have DPR or technical review committee, and the state mandates those avenues in certain development circumstances. And there are other towns that don't have the ability to even comply with one of those. So at least we have the infrastructure set up with our current development plan review, where the projects aren't getting held up. I mean, they're going through the process now. But again, it's up to the board, whether you guys want to move this one to maybe a September meeting, not around a holiday.
Yeah, this is
not around, people going back to school or not going back to
I
school.
mean, it's up
or
to my
whatever.
colleagues as well, but to me, this is not a priority. And unless I have to do it because of a state law change, it's kind of like, okay, we can get to it at the end of the year.
We actually kind of comply with state law by our old ordinance because of development plan review.
Okay.
We're covering the basis, not correct. I agree with not to the letter of the law. We really do need to change it to keep everything flowing through the subdivision regulations, which
Okay.
is really where it belongs. But
Okay.
maybe a battle for another day. I don't know.
Well, this was gonna say, this was the first time, like I said, the first time I've seen this. And it seems like a pretty dramatic change to go send to the city council. So to me, I'd rather send the comp plan first to the city council and this goes later.
So this is not scheduled to, this was, no.
For September 2nd, it's just the comp plan.
We would be looking more at October or potentially even later. We understand, this is just to introduce this so we can start having these discussions.
All right. I'm gonna educate myself on this thing, so I understand it better. Commissioner Lampier?
Thank you. May I make a request? When we revised the subdivision regulations last to comply with state law, you were kind enough to put after each section where there were changes made, a parenthetical that said required by state law.
No, we can do that same
or
table.
Not. And that would be very helpful when we do our review.
And we can do that with the references to the specific state laws that prompted the changes. Although we are in complying with state law, we're working to make our process work. So
No, I
want to
understand.
I also
able
wanted
be-
to
but-
state.
I don't want to be limited to only being as good as the state law. We could make our processes a little bit easier to understand.
It would just help if they were identified so that, you know, there may be some things I would argue about, but if I see that it's state law, I'm not going to be successful because it has to be. So it might eliminate some of that, but it would also, I think, head off some of the questions. And the other request I would make is, I know with some of the comp plan elements in the, before we adopted that, they were sent to the commissioners in Word format. I'm not sure if I had to make a specific request and they were sent to me that way, or if it was, but if draft ordinances and draft elements of the comp plan could be sent to us, we don't always get them that far in advance. And in order to prepare something for a meeting, it would be really helpful if it was in that format so that we could, if need be, draft an amendment to be ready to pass out to fellow commissioners on the day of the vote.
Yeah, we can accommodate that. And I did want to state, so for the subdivision regulations, I did add a table that is in line with that. I am still working on it for the zoning ordinance. It's just that table was a bit more complicated. So, and currently we do have a lot going on. So I don't have that ready quite yet, but I can have that ready for,
Yeah, it is
at some
ready for the
point.
subdivision regs. The subdivision regs are the one part we have to hold a public hearing on, and the earliest we could choose to do that would be October, but that's at the discretion of you
Like I
guys.
said, we'll get through September's meeting and then we'll see where we stand in this comp plan.
But it's just good to have these things out there for people to take a look at.
Right, it
Was
gets
our goal
me,
tonight.
it gets me to review the Development Review Committee detail more. The other part of the zoning ordinance, I call it Part A, which is basically changes can be consistent with state law. There's a couple of places where you go beyond state law, and I'll just talk about that right now. First, I'll start with just saying, yes, changing the definitions to match state law, fine. Sometimes you can just do it by citing the statute, but I understand Solicitor Marcella's point. It's easier for staff to be able to see the exact wording. I just want the exact wording used. Unless there's ambiguity and we think we have discretion, fine, but otherwise just use the language so that we don't have too much of a difference. But where we have a difference of opinions on, like, for example, like this ADU is a new policy. So when the zoning ordinance that you propose, and we've talked about this before, and I've expressed to you my non-support for having ADUs in all residential zones. And that's in this ordinance. That's not required by state law. It's required in the sense of you have to allow ADUs in 20,000 square foot lots. You have to allow it in places where the person can build within their footprint or envelope, whatever the phrase is used. So that I understand, but you seem to go beyond that. And to me, like, I used to live in the Eden Park, so I used to live on these lots in this area. Some of our city, our community is pretty small. It's 4,500 feet. There's really no room for an ADU, or it's difficult. And so I don't want to create a confusion that people think they can put an ADU there and then we have a whole problem about it. And then, in the city of Cranston, we allow by ordinance family ADUs, for family members. So if people have a family member and they want to have an ADU, they can do so. People want to do an ADU otherwise, they can ask for a variance.
So
Go ahead.
Stevie,
Go ahead.
you're
Sylvester.
saying section E of the ADUs. Jonas, can you go down? I think you just pass it.
Yeah, how's that?
Section of the ADU section.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, keep going down.
Section F.
Yeah. No, yeah, but no.
Disregard. Oh, section, which number? 20.0? 2020?
Shall be permitted in all residential districts. It's basically just cite the state law. This is where you're allowed to do it under these circumstances. That's all it is. 20,000 square foot and within the footprint, blah, blah, blah. So that doesn't create a confusion that we're permitting it in all circumstances in all zoning districts.
Correct, and the reason why we did that was permitted anyway.
Oh, I understood that.
And more importantly, if it does change, then we don't have to keep changing this every 6 months.
Yeah, so you, to me, is like you cite the state laws. Okay, so let me see if I'm reading this. And again, I apologize, I'm reading this very quickly, Steve.
No,
You know, this because I'm looking, an accessory dwelling unit that meets the requirements of blah, blah, blah.
which is those three.
State laws, I get it.
Those- Yep.
And then it has section blank, 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 shall be permitted use in all zoning districts. So my concern is the F may be too broadly written, so someone could interpret it to be all permitted uses in a residential zoning district. If your F section is too broadly written, Steve, people could say, I don't meet 1 or 2, but I meet F and therefore I'm allowed into it. They have, 1 and 2, the state laws constrain the definition of F. So if you're going to put F, it has to be, they conform with those state laws. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so. And I could, I could go really on and on about it. But to me, I understand complying with state law, but I don't want us to inadvertently go beyond state law on ADUs, Steve. Yep.
If you go to F, it actually then, yep, so F mirrors,
F1 does, okay, keep going.
yep, and then you keep going.
Blah, 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 blah. Is that all in the state law?
So that, exactly, the 60%, so that all that underlined is all state law. And
Okay,
that changes, so go back up, Jonas. So we used to have the 600, the 400, and
yeah,
go back down. And now that the ADU, that changes because it's 900 or 1,200 or 60% of your, so number 2 mirrors state law. Keep going. Number 3 mirrors state law. 4 mirrors state law.
yep,
We got rid of 5
Yep.
and 6, 7. Primary structure, mirrors state law. So Matt, and I don't know if we need 7. That's,
Are part of a larger, I think that's in state law, by the way.
yeah, that is.
That is,
Yeah.
I have to think, keep going down. I
And
just want to see some.
8 is,
All right, what
that
I'll
may
do,
not be.
Steve, so I don't want to
Okay.
belabor is, I'm going to look at this with you.
all right, yep.
And make sure this, we're not going, what I'm saying to you is, as our solicitor, I
No,
want to
yeah,
follow
no,
state law, but I do not want to inadvertently go beyond state law, and then
Agreed.
someone starts screaming at the city council about what we did,
Yep.
that we didn't know what they were doing.
Agreed. I'll, ADUs, I know. I
Okay,
agree with you with it. We're on the same page.
okay.
I-
And
I
then there's,
believe we mirrored it, but we can take the time to do it.
and the last one is you go to I, it's about parking on ADUs.
So the parking is, I believe,
Go
the
back up,
only
go back
thing
up.
that is discretionary.
This discretionary, I think it's supposed to be 1 parking spot at least. We cannot require more than 1 parking spot per unit.
Correct.
So this allows us to go below the 1.
This is a discretion. So this, I haven't changed the table. So this below is a discretionary change that we're proposing. This is specifically if only would qualify if someone had an elderly or disabled family member, then we could put in a section that could ask for an exemption.
Okay, so this would be not a right, this would be a request for a waiver. And it would be for family members and disabilities only.
And then the purpose would be to not pave the whole yard.
No, I
So
get that. I just
currently, I
wanted
haven't
to,
written that it is an exemption, but again, to even get to this stage, you need to still do the whole thing where you like submit
okay.
like an affidavit. that you
Like I
have
said,
that, Yeah.
I'm reading this very quickly and I apologize that usually what would happen is I'd call Steve ahead of time and go through it with him. So I had to waste everyone's time for about 20 minutes about this, but that's what it is. I think, okay, we'll talk some more about it, but
Yeah.
other than, like I said, Steve, I'm gonna let you finish talking. No problem. It's just my whole thing. I'll talk to you offline. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we are going to state law, but not beyond.
No one agrees with you more than me, Steve, but
Okay,
we can,
that's,
we can
okay.
certainly,
Okay.
yeah, we can
Any
certainly
other,
make sure I'm doing that.
any other comments or questions from my fellow colleagues on this one? Okay. All right, unless, okay, if you don't mind, I knew you'd want to talk. Okay, we're gonna do public comment. Mr. Murray?
No, I really don't. I have a lot of comments, not tonight's not tonight.
Not voting on this
No, I
tonight,
understand.
and you okay?
Can you just, for my benefit, explain to me what your anticipation is for next Tuesday?
Not voting on this.
Because the docket hasn't, I understand that, but the
Yeah.
docket hasn't been posted yet. I know there was an ad in the Herald,
But it's not the zoning ordinances.
But as it relates to the comment, just in terms of preparation to comment next week, can somebody
Oh, I'm sure. So
explain to me what you anticipate
my
the
anticipation,
docket will look like and what your,
right, what I
what
anticipate,
actions you
what,
may take?
what we are anticipating is the comp plan amendments, the comp plan and any amendments to it, like the housing thing. I do not anticipate, and I do not want this zoning ordinance on the agenda. Okay, because it's too much already. We're gonna have Bond Lane next Tuesday. Oh, yes. And then we have Knightsville. And so we're gonna have the comp plan, and that, I don't want to do zoning. Is that sufficient clarity for you?
yeah.
Or subdivision regulations?
I got it.
Okay,
And my last, just a commercial is you have many meetings to go to. I just want to, for the record, say that tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. at the St. Mary's Feast Society Hall, there will be a housing project presented to the community. I believe the Planning Commission members received an invitation, the city council members have. A lot going on tomorrow night with the city council, but I just want to mention if anyone's interested, it's an exciting proposal for Knightsville, and you're all welcome to attend.
thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. All right, any quick public comment? I'm telling you, you're gonna get another chance to talk about this ad nauseam if you want. Okay. Mr. Lima, is anybody on? Thank you. All right. If there's anything else people have? Okay, we're gonna go to the next item on the agenda, which is subdivision regulations. Again, there's a bunch of changes here, Steve. This is to the city solicitor.
So these I haven't gotten to yet, so.
Okay, all right. So we haven't, because he hasn't reviewed it.
Yep.
I do not really want to talk about it right now. There's a lot here. The only thing I'll tell the staff right now is I would like to make one clear change is that when we have in our regulations, I want to make it clear that we provide public hearings when there's a preliminary plan. Okay, state law does not prevent us from having public hearings in a preliminary plan, and it requires us to provide notice. Our subdivisions reflect that we provide notice. I want to make it clear we provide hearings as well, so that we don't have this issue coming up periodically as we've had in other applications. So that's the one thing I can just tell you right off the bat. Looking at this, there's a lot going on, and I was gonna say I need the solicitor to review it first, and then they'll save everyone a lot of time just doing that process. I understand, and thank you for putting this in front of me, because I gotta
So,
look at it.
Yeah,
anyway.
have all the members look at it too and provide comments directly back to Beth and Jonas
Right,
and,
Right.
you know, and whomever.
okay. Does anyone took the time to read those 100 or whatever pages and want to, people want to talk about right now? Oh, I know you do. You want to have more public comment, Bob? He was driving around with it in his car and he waved it at me like, what you made me do?
Commissioner Frias,
Yeah,
may I?
give us one.
So for the the zoning ordinance definitely has more discretionary items, I would say, than the subdivision regulations. When it comes to the subdivision regulations, a lot of the stuff that's in there is just straight taken from the state law. There are some items that we have integrated, but might need to be reviewed again at some point. One of those being the attached single-family units where it is required that we integrate them, but we still don't really know how best to handle them because the state law, this is something that's brand new to us, and the state law
Right.
is pretty broad when it comes to them. So I wrote a section in there that I think hopefully best addresses it because,
Right.
but again, it's discretionary. It's something that can be reviewed again.
And I was going to say, Mr. Bergman, is like Commissioner Lampier suggested, like, it's really helpful if you can do an index like of like what's required by state law, what's a new thing.
Yes.
So that we
I
can
actually
kind of
do
know
have
where
a-
we can, yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
That's
you
on the
know,
website.
That's, like that kind of a thing, exactly.
Yes.
So that we can go through it. But I'd like the solicitor to look at it, make sure that we are not going beyond state law, but where we are, we know exactly, how we're going beyond state law and we understand why. I know like the notice thing with the mail, for example, is something that's not required by state law, but it's a positive for people who want to ask for changes and do stuff with the property. Okay. All right, is there anything else from anyone else about this? Because I told everybody I try to get out of here by 8:30. Nothing, okay. Anyone have public comment on this? Mr. Lima, anybody online have public comment on this? Yep.
There is no
okay,
public
okay,
comment.
Thank you. Mr. Lima is required by his contract to say the phrase, "There is no public comment here," when there's nobody online, obviously. Thank you, Mr. Lima. But anyway, anything else from the staff or other stuff? I know you guys have a long week ahead of you to try to get ready for Tuesday.
Yeah, we just welcome any comments, or if you'd rather call us or email, we will take comments in any form that is you find most convenient.
Exactly. So everyone has the right to make public comment at the hearing. Everybody has the right to make written comments. If probably want to make a phone call, whatever it is, we take that into account. All right, that's about it. Is there anything else from anyone else? All right, if there's not, and if it's okay with the city solicitor and my vice chairman, you guys okay with adjourning? I knew he would. Okay, motion adjourned by Coop, second by Carrero. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All right, ayes have it. See you next week.